Ready? 8 minutes. Okay. Usually I can talk folks' ears off about this subject. You get the 8-minute view of my project. Booth out there, you come and talk about culverts. If you have any follow-up questions. So for the past 30 years, I've been a hydrobiologist in the Pacific Northwest. First 10 years in Puget Sound, and the last 20 been the natural resource advisor for the federal Columbia River Power System for public power. So that's been my world, the big salmon wars, Snake River dams, dam removals. But I kept hearing about culvert issues. And there's a big lawsuit between the Puget Sound tribes and the state of Washington to protect salmon habitat in the freshwater salmon habitat in the Puget Sound area. And there was a settlement. This went to Supreme Court a couple times. There's a $7.2 billion settlement to remove 400 culverts in Washington state. So that really got my attention. Start focusing on, we can get fish past dams, but they're bumping their nose against all these culverts. So I started doing some investigation and look at what's going on out there. And there's some really good inventories. The Fish Habitat Group out of Southeast US identified about 6.3 million aquatic crossings in the United States. Only about 95% have been surveyed, and less than 8,000 have been mitigated or removed. And in Washington State, WDFW has a very robust culvert assessment program. I think that we've identified 46,000 aquatic barriers, characterized them, dots on maps, pictures. I mean, it's a fantastic program, tons of data. They just went through a 2-year prioritization program to figure out which one's first. And so they're replacing, starting with these 400 for 7.2 billion, but we still have about 46,000 to go. And, working to preserve our salmon, which used to be the only species of Washington state. Now they've discovered all these other aquatic species. What are we going to do about these culverts? So this is a pretty savvy group. Don't have to tell you guys what the problem are with these culverts, but just in general, high water velocity, shallow depth, steep gradient, and plunge height distances. So my background's like primarily salmonids, but as I've got out in the world, I've learned this term AOP, Aquatic Organism passing. So hellbenders in the southeast, darters, eels. I learned about the bog turtle recently, our smallest turtle in North America. So removal and replacement is the best option. I mean, I would never argue against that. There's a project, Interstate 5 is a main north-south in Western Washington. There's a 3 culvert replacement project under Interstate 5. It's going to cost $136 million for one fish passage project. And people are kind of shaking their head that that's a lot of money for these projects. Are there other things we can do? Those are to be done, but it's part of a settlement, but it's just such a massive problem. All of our aquatic creatures are suffering from 1,000 cuts. So met a gentleman from New Zealand, and he came up with, he's been working on culvert retrofits for the last 17 years or so. And we spent a lot of time talking about it and theories and what we're really trying to do at culverts. I was up in Surrey, BC, working on one of my culvert projects, and I turned around and I took that picture on the left, and it kind of, it's like an apple hit me on the head, and I yelled "Eureka" to make some metaphors. We're trying to create complexity back in those culverts. I mean, culverts are designed to be hydraulically efficient, which isn't good for fish or aquatic organism passage. And Kelly sent me that picture on the right, and it just made sense. So we're trying to make the culvert invisible to the environment. So have more complex hydrology in a steep environment, have less complexity in a shallow slope environment. So how do we do that? So baffles and weirs, I've studied fish passage for 30 years. This is the things we've done: CDF analysis, physical plants, physical models, on-site, 1-to-1 scale fish ladder evaluations. So this is not strange to me. So I ChatGPT looked up some of the first weirs were used for fish passage back in the 1830s. in Scotland. So that there's tons of information on using weirs and baffles for fish passage. So I could go into the science later, but let's assume for the moment they're useful at times. Well, they kind of definitely fell out of favor in culverts because, as you can see here, they reduce the size of your culvert or conveyance. They catch a lot of debris. They cause a lot of problems. They break. It's a maintenance issue. So in the conveyance culvert world, pipe world, they kind of fell out of favor. But we came up with this idea: what if you could address some of those problems with solid baffles? And that's where you get into these flexible baffles. So the similar biological benefits to those solid baffles, but they're designed to not retain debris. They maintain most of the hydraulic capacity of your culvert. And we can talk about what they're made of and all that stuff. They can be a temporary or permanent installation. In New Zealand, they're managing their culverts like we do our bridge systems in the United States, where you have regular assessments. And they look at both kind of the physical condition of the culvert plus the fishery. So you get a report, an annual or biannual report on the condition of that culvert for the roading authorities, the DOTs. So these can be installed in any size or shape of culvert. And I right now, we started this about 5 years ago, working with these flexible baffles, and it's kind of a one-off project. I work with a biologist or engineer. We get the size and shape of the culvert. We develop some spacing tables based on slope. And then the size of that baffle is sized to what organisms you're working with. And I'm more in the Northwest, kind of northern here up into Canada. So we're trying to knock down high flows for stronger swimming salmonids. But in New Zealand, and I'm learning more about this southeast of US, they're dealing with much smaller, weaker swimming fish. In New Zealand, they have freshwater shrimp, eels, and a glax and a small minnow. So they use smaller baffles to pool water during summertime low flows. So it's a real flexible type installation for a flexible baffle, so to speak. So costs, and there's a lot of success stories. They did a project with some high school kids up in Surrey, BC, 500-foot long concrete culvert. Took 3 days for these students to put in 60 baffles. And that fall, we had coho salmon passed up for the first time in 70 years. And I have a picture of my display out there, a little 4-inch coho smoked juvenile. It's the first salmon that was produced up there in 70 years. It's like the best project I've ever worked on in my career. So we can talk about success. That's when I do the longer presentations. We talk about success stories. But let's dive right into cost. King County, which is Seattle area, has a whole list of culverts they've identified. They applied some costs with removing bridging, which is a great type of project. Bridging those projects, but I thought, well, heck, what would it take to install baffles in some of these where it's most appropriate? That you need to have a narrow focus on what's most appropriate, like a depth barrier or a slope barrier, velocity barrier. Those would be appropriate for a baffle installation. So I went down the list. These are just two of them. You have a 9-foot squash culvert, 55 feet long, and King County estimates $5.3 million to replace. Now that's the complete impacts. It's traffic mitigation, time and materials. I mean, just pulling these things out is just like on logging rolls. You pull them out. It's pretty straightforward. But the 5.3 million, but I could do it for about 9,000 and probably 2 days labor with high school kids that know how to use a drill. Now, when you use baffles, they're not going to last as long as concrete. You do need to have a follow-up maintenance program, and New Zealand's way far ahead of us on that. They're doing annual inspections on their culvert projects. So if there is a problem with one of the baffles or you need an improvement, you could do that each year. And another project, it just kind of mind-blowing, 1.8 million to replace these two. I mean, they're perfectly good structurally. They do what they are intended to do. So this is kind of folks we work with across North America, 15 states, 4 provinces so far. We also have a bunch of projects in Western Europe, and Kelly's down in New Zealand. So New Zealand and Australia. So that's just a summary, straightforward stuff. Come talk to me if you have further questions. Thank you for your time. Any questions?